I froze at my own front door. Inside, my wife was laughing, and my son was calling another man daddy. In that moment, my heart just stopped. I had imagined many things that could happen in a lifetime, but never did I think I would stand here, watching this, right in the house I spent half my life building. Outside, the rain drummed on the roof, and mixed with it, laughter spilling out from the living room. That sound used to be all I wanted to hear after every long business trip. But tonight, it only made my chest tighten. I didn't go in. I leaned closer, looked through the crack of the door. Warm yellow light spilled out, so soft it hurt to look at. My wife sat on the sofa, hair falling loose, eyes sparkling at the screen in her hand. That smile of hers. I couldn't remember the last time it was meant for me. My little boy held his tablet laughing, his tiny voice ringing out, "Daddy, Daddy, look, I drew you at school today." The man he called Dad wasn't me. My hands started to shake. My feet felt nailed to the ground. For a moment, I wanted to believe I heard wrong. But then he said it again, so innocent it cut deep. "Are you coming home this weekend? I miss you so much." Each word slammed into my ears. I didn't know who I was anymore. Was I the husband coming home from another long trip, or just a stranger standing outside his own house, listening to his wife and son call someone else by the name I've spent 5 years trying to be worthy of? I stood there for a long time. My hand was still on the doorknob, but I couldn't turn it. Everything in front of me blurred. All those years of early mornings and late nights. All those times I told myself that if I just kept trying, this family would be happy. And tonight, it all crumbled, brought down by a single innocent word. I didn't hate them, but in that brief moment, I understood. Maybe I was the one who no longer belonged in this home. I stepped back, leaning against the cold wall. Inside, the laughter only grew louder, and not one person in that warm, bright room noticed that I had come home. That night, for the first time in years, I felt myself disappear from the lives of the people I loved most. My name is Michael. I'm 35, a civil engineer. If you had asked me before that night what my life was like, I would have said, quiet, simple, and I thought it would last forever. I was born into a working-class family in Indiana. My father was a carpenter. My mother worked at a small bakery. My childhood was the sound of hammers on wood, the smell of pine resin, and late dinners where my dad told stories in his deep, rough voice. Maybe that's why I grew up believing that if I worked long and hard enough, I could build something solid, a home that would never fall apart. I met Emily, my wife, at a friend's birthday party. She wasn't the type to make a whole room turn and stare. Quite the opposite. Quiet, soft-spoken. But there was something about her eyes and her smile that made you feel you could breathe a little easier. I still remember the very first question she asked me that night. "So, what do you do for a living?" I laughed, a little awkward. "Construction. Sounds boring, right?" She shook her head. "No, I like people who build things. Things that others can lean on." That answer stopped me for a moment. And maybe, right there, I knew I wanted to be that for her. The person she could lean on. We dated, fell in love, and 2 years later, we got married. It wasn't a big wedding, just a handful of close friends and family. What mattered to me that day was the moment I looked into her eyes and saw my whole future. In 2018, Liam, our son, was born. I'll never forget the first time I held him. He was so small, his tiny hand wrapped around just one of my fingers, and I made a promise to myself. From this day on, everything I do will be to make sure he and his mom will never go without. The first years were truly peaceful. We rented an old apartment. The walls had cracks here and there, but every night the lights were on, and there was always laughter. On weekends, the three of us would drive to a small supermarket, buy a few discounted groceries, and come home to cook a meal together. Our dreams were simple: a little house in the suburbs, a small yard where Liam could run, and an old car just big enough for camping trips in the summer. I believed that if I worked hard enough, we could make it all come true. And then, work began to pile up. 3 years ago, I started taking on extra projects, working late, working weekends. There were months I barely spent a single week at home. I kept telling myself, just a little more, push a little more. It'll all be worth it. But while I was busy building towers out there, I never saw the cracks forming in the home I had built. I still remember one night, after 3 weeks away, I finally came home. The lights were on, but the laughter inside stopped. Liam ran out and wrapped himself around me. But when Emily looked at me, her eyes no longer had the light they used to. It felt like she was looking at a stranger. Another time, it was my birthday. I came home hoping for a simple dinner, but the apartment was empty. On the table was a drawing from Liam, 3 figures drawn in messy crayon, and a note from Emily. Took Liam out with a friend. Find yourself something to eat. I stood there silent and told myself, it's okay, just hold on a little longer. But deep down, I knew there was a distance growing between us, a distance I didn't know how to close. As time went on, that house felt emptier, not because there was less furniture, but because there was less of us. Dinner turned cold. The chair across from me stayed empty, and I ate in silence. Some nights, coming home late, I would only see Emily's back, sitting at Liam's desk. She'd listen to him read, nod, then quietly walk into the bedroom. Before I could say a word, Liam stayed the same, innocent like any other child. But sometimes, I noticed he smiled wider when he talked to someone on the screen of a tablet. One evening, as I stepped out of my room, I heard him shout, "Daddy, look at me." I smiled instinctively. But he ran straight, not to me, to the tablet in his hands. The man on the screen wasn't me. I didn't ask Emily about it. Part of me trusted her. The other part was afraid of the answer. Some fears don't need proof. You can feel them in every glance. The change came quietly, through small things. She started going to bed early, leaving me alone in the dark living room. Her phone always face down. New passwords? I didn't know. Our conversations shrank to short, empty exchanges. How was your day? Fine. And that was it. I began to wonder, when did we stop telling each other the small, ordinary things? Maybe it was the day I believed that love was just making money, and that being there for each other could wait. Last winter, I asked for a week off. I wanted to make up for lost time. I cooked breakfast in the morning, picked Liam up after school, washed the dishes at night. But none of it could bring back the way Emily used to look at me. Once, I gently put a hand on her shoulder. She flinched, stepped back, just a little, like an instinct, and I realized I was living in a house that everyone else had already left, leaving only the furniture and the silence. I knew I was losing her, but I didn't know how to hold on. There were times I wanted to sit her down and pour everything out, but I was afraid that once the words were spoken, everything would break. So I stayed silent, and buried myself in work, hoping a paycheck could somehow patch what time and distance had already broken. Until that night, after a long business trip, I came home a day early, hoping to surprise them. I even bought Liam a new box of crayons. Driving home, I imagined him running out and throwing his arms around me, like he used to. But as soon as I parked in front of the house, everything I imagined vanished. The lights were on. Laughter spilled out, loud and happy. This time, it didn't stop, because no one knew I was there. I stood on the porch. My heartbeat slowed. Through the crack of the door, I saw Emily smiling brightly at a phone screen, and Liam sitting close beside her, holding up a drawing. "Daddy, please come home this weekend. I miss you so much." The daddy he was talking to wasn't me. I stood frozen. I didn't need any more words. The distant look in her eyes, the silent dinners, the phones turned face down. It all led here, to this moment. That night, I finally understood something I should have seen long ago. Long before this, I had already stopped being part of their world, and I didn't know that this moment was only the beginning of everything that was about to come. I didn't open the door that night. I just stood there until the laughter inside faded away and the living room light went dark. It felt like all the strength had been drained out of me. Only the slow, steady rhythm of my own breath reminded me I was still alive. I walked back to the car, sat there in silence. The box of crayons I'd bought for Liam was still in the seat beside me, warm in its paper bag, while my hands were ice cold. I stared at it for a long time, almost trying to believe that if I could just bring that gift inside, everything would go back to normal. But deep down I knew Some things can't be fixed with a gift. So I drove, not knowing where I was going. Just kept driving through the night. It was almost 2 in the morning. When I came back, that night, I slept in the car. The next morning, I walked in. Emily was still asleep. Liam came running out, hugging me tight, smiling wide, showing me a new drawing. I looked closer and saw that the figure of Dad was just a blank shape, left uncolored. I forced a smile, handed him the box of crayons. He cheered and ran off. Emily woke a little later, surprised to see me. "You're home early." "Yeah. Finished work, so I came back." That was it. No hug, no other questions. From that day, I started watching. I'm not the suspicious kind of man. But that night outside the door had left a deep scratch in my chest. I noticed she carried her phone everywhere, even to the bathroom. At night, when I asked, "How was your day?" the answer never changed. "Fine. Just tired." And then, silence. Her eyes back on the screen. One night, after Liam had fallen asleep, I was cleaning the kitchen. I heard soft laughter. From the living room, I walked out. The pale blue light from a screen was on Emily's face. She was on a video call. "Daddy, are you coming tomorrow?" Liam's voice came from the tablet beside her. I froze. "Shh, not so loud," she whispered, and quickly closed the screen. When she saw me, that moment felt like someone had pulled all the air out of the room. After that, everything became clearer. She started going out more, coming home later. One afternoon, I left work early without telling her. I parked a block away from the house. 15 minutes later, she walked out, dressed carefully, makeup done. She hailed a cab to a cafe downtown. From across the street, through the glass, I saw her sit opposite a man. I couldn't see his face, but I saw something else. A smile. A free, easy smile I hadn't seen on her face in years. I stood there, on the sidewalk, looking in through the glass, like a beggar staring at a warm house. And I knew that home hadn't had a place for me for a long time. That night, I said nothing. She said nothing. Liam went to bed early, leaving only the silence. I looked down at my hands. These calloused hands, from years of holding blueprints, lifting bricks, working on site. I thought, if I just worked hard enough, these hands would build peace. But all they built was distance. Late that night, Emily lay with her back to me. The glow of her phone lit up the wall. She was smiling at someone, a smile I hadn't seen aimed at me for a very long time. I turned my face to the dark, and in that moment, I realized, in this room, in this house, I had already become someone, standing on the outside, and I didn't know yet that what I'd seen in these few days was only the surface of something much deeper and much more painful, waiting ahead. In the days that followed, I stopped just standing on the outside. I needed answers. No shouting, no confrontation, just quiet, collecting the pieces, like picking up broken bricks from the very house I had tried to build. In the mornings, when Emily took Liam to school, I quietly checked the old phone she once synced with. The GPS history showed red dots that didn't lead home. A coffee shop downtown, a park 40 minutes away. I stared at the map, line after line, as if it was guiding me through places my heart was never allowed to enter. Liam gave me other pieces. Once, he drew a picture of 3 people, himself, his mom, and a man I didn't know. I knelt beside him. "Who's this, buddy?" He smiled, innocent. "Mom's friend, my new dad." I couldn't ask anything else, because in his eyes was a joy I hadn't seen in a very long time. When he was with me, I quietly put the drawing away in a drawer, my hands trembling. Another night, after a long shift, I heard Liam's voice from the kitchen. "Dad, I got an A today." The man's reply on the other end was faint. I only heard Liam's voice again. "Yeah, come tomorrow, okay? You promised." I stood outside the half-closed door, and it felt like all the blood drained out of my body. Not anger, just empty. And in the end, I did something I never thought I would do. I followed her. That day, I left work early. I waited until Emily left the house, then quietly trailed behind, keeping my distance. She took a cab to the city center and went into a small cafe. I stayed across the street. After a while, he came. This time, I saw him clearly. He sat down, reached out, held her hand, and what crushed me most, she let him, and smiled. In that moment, everything around me, cars, voices, went silent. All I could hear was my heartbeat. Heavy, I felt myself step out of my own body, watching the two of them through the glass, no strength left to move. I used to think, if I ever saw this, I'd storm in, but I didn't. I just stood there, not because I was weak, but because, in that moment, I knew what I had been trying to save had slipped out of my hands a long time ago. That night, I got home a few minutes before she did. The house was quiet. I walked into Liam's room. He was asleep, holding tight the box of crayons I'd given him before. On his desk was a drawing, still unfinished. This time, the man in the picture was colored in, smiling, and where I was supposed to be was still blank, white. I reached out to touch the paper, but halfway, my hand froze, shaking. Even a 5-year-old understood better than I did that in this house, I was nothing more than a shadow. I closed the door gently. In the hallway, Emily was standing there. Our eyes met, not a word. That night, lying in bed, the house was so silent. I could hear my own heartbeat, and in that silence, I knew that night outside the door wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. The real storm was still coming. Ever since that day at the park, there's been no room left in me for calm. I stopped lying to myself that everything will be fine. I stayed silent, just so I could hear more clearly. The sound of this house breaking apart. The long talks were gone. We moved around each other, like two strangers, living under the same roof. Liam was the only bridge left between us. But even that bridge was starting to sway. In a wind it couldn't understand. My boy got used to calling someone every night. One evening, he looked at me and asked, in that innocent voice, "Daddy, are you sleeping here tonight?" A simple question, but it sounded like a guest, asking about the schedule of the homeowner. And then came that night. I had just reached the front door, not even pressing the bell, when I heard Emily's voice inside, soft but clear. "I don't know how much longer I can take this, but he's starting to get suspicious." A pause. Then a deep male voice over the phone. "Just hold on a little longer. I promise, one day, we'll be a real family. You and the boy." I froze on the other side of the door. My hand on the knob started to shake. Those words, a real family, were enough to tell me I'd just been erased from the very family I had built. I turned away, walked back to the car, sat there in the dark, until every light in the living room went out. The next morning, I cleared out a desk drawer. A folded piece of paper slipped out. Her handwriting. "We've grown too far apart. I don't feel like I belong in this house anymore. What's left here are walls and habits. I need to give myself a chance to breathe." I read it over and over, each word pulling something else out of me. By the time I noticed, the sweat wrinkling my palms, the paper was already crushed. The next day, Liam asked to go to the park. I said yes, but after they left, I quietly followed. I stood behind a row of trees, watched them sitting on a bench. Liam ran around laughing, and that man, he bent down and tied my son's shoelaces. Such a small gesture, but to me, it felt like a knife. Slow, I felt the blood rush to my face, my fingers digging so deep into my own hand. I could feel my nails breaking skin. I wanted to step out, but I didn't. Some pain makes no sound. Sometimes, just watching is enough to break you. That night, as Emily was about to leave again, I couldn't swallow it anymore. I asked, "Where did you go this afternoon?" She stopped, took Liam to see a friend or someone. I pressed 1 second of silence. Then she looked away. "I'll tell you later." That answer felt like a hammer, driving the final nail into a door. For the first time in months, I asked directly. My voice was hoarse, short. No begging, just exhaustion. "What am I to you, Emily? What are we now?" She didn't say a word. She just looked at me, silent. And then she turned away. Her hand reached for the closet, touched the gray suitcase. In the corner, her hand stayed there, not pulling it out, not pulling back. I watched, and in that moment, everything around me fell quiet. Inside my head, there was only one thought left. Maybe it's all coming closer than I ever imagined. Emily's hand stopped on the gray suitcase. The room was so quiet. I could hear the clock ticking. I asked, my voice rough, "Where are you going?" Without turning around, she said softly, "I'm just tired, Michael." I sat down on the chair, looked at her back. "There's someone else, isn't there?" A long breath. She turned, leaning against the closet. Her eyes locked on mine, calm in a way that scared me. "You want to hear it from me?" I nodded, slowly. "Yes, I've changed. And I'm sorry." I stayed silent. No anger, no argument. Just one more question. "Since when?" "Maybe from all those days you were gone." I felt left behind. I tried to come back. But one day I realized I don't see myself here anymore. That last line cut right through me. Not because of the other man, but because I understood, even without him, I had already lost her. A long time ago. I lowered my head, my hands locked tight together. I thought, if I worked hard enough, it would be enough. But while I was building houses out there, I let this one collapse. Emily bit her lip, looked away. Her voice came out hoarse. "I don't want to fight. I just need a place where I can breathe." I looked up, eyes burning. "And what about our son? I'll never take Liam away from you, but I can't live like this anymore. He loves him. And Liam, he needs a happy family. A happy family." I repeated the words slowly, like chewing on a stone. Just then, Liam came running out, clutching his toy car. "Mom, are we leaving yet?" "Dad," other dad said. "He's taking me fishing this weekend. Will you come too?" That innocent question froze everything in time. I looked at my son, but I couldn't answer. Because I knew, in that question, I wasn't the first dad anymore. Emily bent down, patted his head, then looked up at me. "Michael, don't let him see us like this. We'll talk later, okay?" I nodded, not in agreement, just because there was nothing left in me to say. The door closed. Their footsteps faded away, leaving the house hollow. I sat alone in the living room. On the rack, Liam's little raincoat still hung there, with white streaks where the water had dried. I stared at it for a long time. My chest felt like something heavy was pressing down. Then I picked up my phone, my fingers trembling, typing each word. "We need to meet. I want to ask about the divorce papers." I set the phone down on the table. Outside, it started to rain, each drop striking the roof hard. Just like that first night, I stood outside the door, listening to my son call another man Dad. The house sank into the dark. Only the faint glow from the phone lit up my face. And on the screen, a new notification appeared. "Appointment. Lawyer. Tomorrow, 9 a.m." I sat there, unblinking. In the dim room, my shadow stretched long, blending into the rain outside, like a shadow that no longer belonged to this house. The next morning, the rain was still falling, soft and cold. I put on my coat and drove to the lawyer's office. The streets were wet, blurred. Through the windshield, everything felt like it stretched on forever. The lawyer slid a stack of papers across the desk. "You sure about this, Michael?" I nodded. "I don't have a choice." He said something else. I didn't hear. All I could see in my head was Liam holding another man's hand, calling him Dad. That afternoon, I texted Emily. "Tonight. One talk. Everything on the table." She replied, "Okay." The cafe? The same place, where I'd once seen them sitting together. Dim yellow lights, the soft clink of spoons against cups, the faint smell of coffee in the air. And that man, already there, beside Emily. I pulled out a chair, sat down. We stared at each other. For a few beats, no one said a word. I broke the silence. "I need to know. Tonight, everything. No more hiding." He stayed calm. "I'm sorry, but I love Emily. And I love the boy." My hands clenched under the table, but my voice stayed even. "Do you understand that you've torn my life apart?" "Yes." Short, without flinching. "Then why?" "Because when I met Emily, she had already been alone for a long time." I turned to Emily. "Is this really the road you chose?" She lowered her head. "I tried to come back, but I don't see myself there anymore." That sentence emptied my chest of air. A long silence. The sound of a spoon stirring coffee somewhere far away, like from another world. Then he looked straight at me. "There's something you need to know." I frowned. He drew a long breath. "I'll take full responsibility. Because Liam isn't your biological son." In that moment, time stopped. A ringing filled my ears. My whole body went numb. My hands went slack. The cup tilted. Hot coffee spilled onto the table. I forced my mouth to move, my voice breaking apart. "What did you just say?" Emily lifted her head, tears falling. "Michael, I was going to tell you later. But it's true. Liam isn't your son." The cafe was crowded, but for me, everything froze. There were only 3 of us, and one truth, shattering the entire world. I had tried so hard to hold together. I sat frozen. The sounds of the cafe vanished, as if the entire world had been drained of air. All that remained was one sentence, echoing in my head, "Liam isn't your son." I looked at Emily, her head bowed, tears running down her face. I opened my mouth, but my voice came out hoarse, like it didn't even belong to me. Then, all these years, what was I to you? Emily's lips trembled. "You were my family, Michael. I did love you. But Liam, that was my mistake, long before I met you. I wanted to keep it from you, because you loved him like your own." I turned to the other man. Each word scraped out of my throat. "Since when?" "Before she met you. When we crossed paths again. I just wanted to take responsibility for my son. I wasn't trying to take anything away from you, but I couldn't abandon him." I stared at the table. My fingers dug into the edge of the chair, trembling. For a long moment, I couldn't speak. It felt like an entire lifetime, passed in those few seconds. Then slowly, clearly, I asked, "From now on, what am I?" No one answered. The question dropped between us, sinking like a stone into deep water. I stood. The chair scraped across the floor, with a long, harsh sound. The man opened his mouth. "Michael, I cut him off. "You don't have to say anything, blood or not. There's one thing you'll never take from me. The love I have for that boy." I turned to Emily one last time. "And you, Emily? Whoever you choose, just promise me one thing. Don't ever let him grow up, watching the 2 of you regret it." Then I walked out. The cold rain slapped against my face, but at least it reminded me I was still alive. I kept walking, without an umbrella. Each step sent water splashing. I don't know how long I walked. I only know, with every step, another piece of my old life fell behind me. That night, the house was dark. I opened Liam's door. He was asleep, breathing steady, holding the box of crayons to his chest. I sat beside his bed, took his small hand in mine, warm, soft. In his sleep, he instinctively squeezed my fingers. Tears blurred my eyes. Hot. I bent down and whispered, "You don't ever have to call me Dad. If you don't want to, but you'll always be my son. No one can take that away." Outside, the rain poured down. Inside that little room, I stayed there for a long time, letting his small hand hold on to mine. And for the first time, I understood something with absolute clarity. Tomorrow, I will step into a new life. But no matter what happens, the love I have for this boy will be the one thing that stays untouched. The next morning, the rain had stopped. Sunlight slipped through the blinds. But inside this house, it was still cold. I sat at the dining table, looking around. The house that once felt like the safest place on earth was now nothing but empty walls, piled high with memories. I asked myself, I've lived here for years, but when did I stop belonging to it? In the afternoon, Emily came home. She stood at the door, hand gripping the strap of her bag. We looked at each other for a long time. I gestured. "Sit. We need to talk." She sat down, her eyes swollen and red. I spoke slowly, each word heavy. "I've met with the lawyer. Starting tomorrow, everything will move forward. I'll let you go. But before that, I need to know one thing. From now on, how are we going to raise that boy?" Tears slid down her cheeks. I'm sorry." I shook my head. "I don't need an apology. I need you to promise me that Liam will never feel like he's been left behind." She lowered her eyes, her hands trembling. "Michael, you're the one he loves most. I never planned to cut you out of his life." I nodded. A long, heavy breath. "I believe you, but we need to be clear. I'll ask for shared custody. No fighting. No noise. But I won't disappear." Silence. A silence so thick, I could hear the ticking of the clock. Then I asked, the question I had kept for months. "Why didn't you tell me from the start?" Emily's voice broke. Her eyes burned red. "Because I was scared. When I met you, I wanted a new life. I thought I could hide the past. But the more I lived with you, the more I felt I owed you, and the more I was terrified that this truth would destroy everything. I closed my eyes. You hiding it is what destroyed me. That night, I took a blanket and moved to the couch, not out of hatred, but because I no longer had the strength to lie next to someone I didn't even know what to call anymore. On that sofa, I stared at the ceiling, and for the first time in years, I saw it clearly. There are wounds no one can heal. You just learn how to live with them. The next day, I asked for a week off. I wanted to take Liam out of the city, just the two of us. On the road, he chattered away, telling me stories, drawing imaginary fish in the air, showing off his box of crayons. I listened to every word, didn't miss a thing. Afternoon sunlight washed through the car window, falling across his little face, and then he dozed off, head leaning against my shoulder. I glanced at him, and in that moment, I understood, no matter how much the world falls apart, I still have this to keep me standing. On the third afternoon, while Liam was asleep, I sent a text. I want to meet, just the two of us. No, Emily, just two men talking. He replied quickly. Where? I sent him the location, a small cafe on the edge of town. The cafe was quiet. I arrived early and chose a table by the window. Outside, open fields stretched out, the wind brushing gently through the grass. When the door opened, a small bell chimed, and he walked in. He sat down. No handshake, only eyes looking straight into each other. I spoke first, slow. I didn't ask you here to fight. I just need clarity. He nodded. I'm ready to listen. I set both hands on the coffee cup in front of me. You've taken my wife. Now all I have left is that boy. You need to understand one thing. I paused. The wind outside stirred the curtain. Blood doesn't matter. That boy grew up with me, and I will always be there for him. Silence. A long beat. Then he said softly, I never planned to take him away from you. He needs both of us. I locked eyes with him. Then promise me this. If one day he forgets who I am, you will remind him that once there was another man who loved him with everything he had. He swallowed hard. I promise. We fell silent again. I turned the coffee cup slowly, then pushed it to the center of the table, placing it down firmly, like drawing a line. I will step out of this marriage, but I will not step out of that boy's life. This is the line. You don't cross it. He nodded quietly. That's what I want too. I stood. Before leaving, I turned back. I don't know if I'll ever be strong enough to forgive, but this time, I will learn to stay close, without needing to belong. The words fell on the table, like a silent knife. On the drive back, fields stretched endlessly on both sides. Liam was still asleep at the hotel. I drove back with a strange feeling. No more storms, just a quiet, steady ache. That night, Liam woke up and found me sitting on the balcony. Dad, why aren't you sleeping? I pulled him into my arms, held him close. I was thinking about the days ahead. Are there good things? I smiled faintly. Yes, because from now on, it'll be just you and me. Together, more than ever. He rested his head against my chest, and in that silence, I knew some things are lost, but some things, as long as you hold on to them, are enough to keep you living. We came back to the city after that trip out of town. Emily's car was already parked in front of the house. The moment Liam saw her, he ran straight into her arms, chattering away about the little river and the imaginary fish he had seen. I stood a few steps behind. No anger left, just a strange calm, mixed with exhaustion. The weeks that followed felt like a film on slow motion. The divorce papers were filed. I signed page after page, each stroke of the pen like pulling another brick out of a house I had built myself. At night, the house was empty again. But this time, the silence didn't feel like a sentence. It was just an empty space, a space for me to learn how to start living again. One afternoon, while cleaning the living room, I came across one of Liam's old drawings. 3 people, and where I should have been, there was only a blank, uncolored space. I sat down, picked up the box of crayons, and slowly, I filled that blank space, not with bright colors, just a soft shade of gray, enough so the drawing was no longer empty, but without covering anyone else's colors. As the crayon touched the paper, I understood. Sometimes, love doesn't have to be in the center of the frame. Sometimes, it's enough just to be there, quietly, The day Liam left with his mom to the new house, the sky was clear and the sun fell slant across the street. He pulled his little suitcase, his small steps slow. At the door, he stopped, turned around, wrapped his little arms around me. "Dad, can I come back on weekends?" I bent down, held him tight, as if I was afraid he might disappear. "Yes. Every weekend you want." He climbed into the car. Through the window, he pressed his face and his tiny hand against the glass. The car rolled forward slowly. He looked back, his eyes innocent and yet reluctant to let go. I stood on the steps, my hand raised, until the car finally turned the corner. When it was gone, the street suddenly felt wider and empty in a way that hurt. That night, I opened the window. The night wind slipped in, stirring the curtains. I sat on the floor, my back against the wall. The room was bare, filled only with the sound of the wind. My eyes landed on the picture hanging on the wall, the one with the patch of gray I had filled in. A part of me was still there, quiet. I don't know what the future will be. I don't know if one day Liam will still remember me the way he does now. But in this moment, I know one thing for sure. Love doesn't need blood. Love is just someone who stays when everyone else has already gone. Outside, the wind moved gently through the curtains. Moonlight spilled in, washing over the drawing. And for the first time, I saw that old blank space, now shaded in gray, as something complete, in its own way.